So I was just telling Dr. Rob that this book arrived. I ordered it from Amazon. This is the clinical book for prodependence. It arrived today. I haven't had time to even really crack it open yet, but I'm going to because it arrived late and I've been busy. But I'm so excited because this is how clinicians are going to learn about the prodependent lens of working with, people who have been betrayed and hurt versus calling them codependent. You're part of the problem. You're an enabler. You're enmeshed, and all of those things. That's how I see it, as you're part of the problem. And it's like, you love somebody who's struggling, and how can we support you is a very different message. So thank you for continuing to, you wrote a book, and then you wrote the clinical book, and then you wrote an updated book of the first book, which is coming out later this year. So I appreciate your work. So
I appreciate you remembering all that, because it was all a blur to me, but I'm really proud of the book for therapists, because people are going to learn a new way of treating families of addicts, and maybe a little bit families of the mentally ill too, who also struggle with a lot of stigma and being blamed for giving too much and all that stuff. But anyway, thank you, Tammy.
Well, and this isn't just for people that are loved ones of sex addicts, porn addicts. I mean, this is,
Right.
I mean, if you love somebody who's struggling with chemical addiction, like, it's the same thing. You may have been labeled as, enmeshed or codependent, and we don't think that's true. So, well, we know it's not true, because there is no such thing as codependence. And we'll tell you why.
Not
But
in
anyway,
that way.
yeah.
We love
Anyway.
people. We love them.
And I have one more thing that I told them that you and I are going to be here next week for Memorial Day, but
We are.
I'm going to put you on the spot. So on June 13th of this year, what's happening?
I'm going to be on TV.
Yes, let's talk about that just briefly, because more will be revealed and we'll be putting notices out, but this is pretty darn exciting.
So the folks who did a show called Intervention for many years on A&E, they decided, the sort of crew, to move on to the digital world and some of the addictive challenges in the digital world. So they created a show called Digital Addiction, which I think is the first airing is June 13th. And they honored me by asking me to do a couple of episodes on porn. It's all about online gambling and gaming, all the challenges that people have online. And I'm the porn guy. So, but I'm
Porn
really
expert,
honored.
the expert.
People ask, like, why do you do that? Why would you want to put yourself out there like that? And the answer is, I get to educate a lot of people. A lot of people get to learn about things like porn addiction that nobody really wants to talk about. And they can look at it as entertainment, but they're learning things. So anyway, thanks, Tammy. Y'all can watch me on TV.
Yeah, and more will be, like, if you haven't done so already, you can register for the email announcements, which we talk about the work groups that are on seekingintegrity.com, but also the free resources on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. And you can just sign up and you'll get the e-newsletters with the updates of things, and that will be part of that. But we're on social media, all the various aspects as well. So okay, on to the questions, Dr. Rob.
Yes, ma'am.
So the first question I'm going to put in the answer. So my SA husband and I have been married for 41 years. Discovery was a year ago, and we had a full therapeutic disclosure in November. He's doing all the recommended work, CSAT, 12-step group, mentor, sponsor, etc. He's had 2 slips since December and confessed to me within 24 hours. Both slips occurred when we were doing really well together. Neither one of us understand why this happens, as it doesn't seem to fall in the typical addiction pattern. Would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say how grateful I am to hear you speaking in the way you do. To me, you are a spouse who's very stable in who they are, understands they've gotten involved with someone who's a chronic emotional illness, understands that, what's really important here is honesty, and who's willing to say to you, I blew it, or I struggled with it, or rather than hiding it. So this is the spouse I would want to be. This is the spouse I'd want my spouse. That's too many spouses.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I really appreciate what you had to say. But I do think in this particular case, you're taking a little too much responsibility for a slip. I'm an addict. I have a slip when I get a raise. I have a slip when that driveway has a hole in it and I never got to fill it. I have a slip when I'm late for an appointment. It doesn't really have to do necessarily with you and me at all. We could be doing, I mean, I've had situations where life was just grand, but that didn't mean that I didn't still want to go out and celebrate that, because we act out whether things are good or things. So I would just suggest that, it's something, it's an inside job. It has to do with what we're dealing with. And you can't make us act out. I mean, that's part of codependence. No one can make us. The coupleship cannot make me act out. You cannot make me act out. It's my choice. Do I go to a meeting? Do I reach out for help? Do I act out? But in any case, I don't think, and really, Tammy, I'd love for you to address this, but I don't think there is once you've gotten to recovery and once you really have time and you're doing all this stuff, to me, there isn't like a typical pattern of slips. I don't know about pattern. Like, I think, I don't want to say they just happen, but
No, I think it's always good, to do like an autopsy on what was I thinking or feeling, the day before, the 2 days before. Like, did something happen or not happen, or so it's good to look at, because you guys are doing well. Was there, did somebody look, cross-eyed at work, or, I mean, like, there's, who knows, what's going on. But I agree with Dr. Rob that, like, a reason to celebrate because things are going good, a reason to, drown our sorrows because things are going bad. Or, I mean, like, there's always an excuse. But I really, and you've been married 41 years. You had discovery a year ago. With all due respect, you guys are in the relationship for a long haul, but you're in recovery for a short time. So the fact that he's doing so well, that you are doing so well with this, that he's showing up and telling you within 24 hours. I was talking to somebody, I think earlier today, doesn't matter, but, and they said, that he had a slip. And I said, so he told you? No, I discovered it. I was like, that's different, like, so what I hear is, in this case, you didn't have to go find it out for yourself. They brought it to you, but it's always good for us, like Dr. Rob has talked before, it's like, it's data for us to go, okay, why, what was going on for me, not even in that moment. I think we give ourselves permission, and then it could be the next day or whenever it is, but something is shifting along the way where we're more vulnerable, and we didn't recognize it, that we slid into that, into that middle area where we could have gone, oops, I need to go get more help, call my sponsor, call my therapist, do something different, and let ourselves slide into the danger zone. So,
and I want to say, sometimes it comes on suddenly. I mean, the last time I really, really wanted to slip, and it was a number of years ago, I was in therapy. I loved my therapist, and she didn't show up one day. Well, guess what happened with me and my mom? And so, the minute I knew she wasn't coming, I thought, oh, I want to go act out. I didn't. I know what to do instead. But it had nothing to do with, I had a great morning, had a great week. We had a great weekend. It just was, I got triggered by something kind of really deep that I wasn't expecting, and I hadn't sort of planned out my day, whatever. So, I would give it the possibility that has to do with a relationship, pretty low odds. And even if it did, I don't think that you're responsible either, or you together responsible for a slip. What else we got, Tam? We have more
well,
questions. I'm glad.
oh yeah, we do, but we're going like, and you guys are talking about it, so that's actually really good too. So, okay, I am the partner of a porn addict. He has been doing great in the recovery process after approximately 1 year since D-Day. He read the book Out of the Doghouse, and I wanted to read it when he was done. He was okay with me reading his answers and has been empathetic throughout this nightmare. However, after chapter 3, I became extremely angry and have not picked it up since. I am unsure as to what triggered me. Is a partner not supposed to read this, or have I just lost my mind?
Well, I don't know. So I'm not sure what else I want to say. I don't, Out of the Doghouse is not written for spouses. It's written for spouses to look at and throw at us guys and say, you just don't get it, do you? What I would be angered by if I were reading it is, how could the person I'm in a relationship not get this? It's so obvious to me that what they did or how it hurt me, or, and honestly, with all due respect, I can't remember chapter 3 from chapter 7 in my mind. I barely know what I had for lunch. Oh no, don't tell us. But
It's autographed too.
thank you, Jim. So, this is really a book for, it isn't really for you guys. In fact, it's kind of a cheat, because if you read it, what you will experience us doing some of the things that are in there. It's a book about empathy is what it's a book about. And it is a book to teach people who've not been empathic because of their addiction or because they're men, which is, kind of related. Um, it's there to teach us how to be kind and understand and respect your harm. And I would imagine, as I said, if I were a partner and I read it, I would be thinking, oh, well, why don't they already know this? I mean, this is so basic. But to us, it isn't basic. We think 2 months and some flowers and you should be over it. And so, just from that perspective, but I don't know what else to give you here. Tammy, do you have a thought?
I do, because first of all, chapter 3 is how women and men view relationships and betrayal. But which is interesting. But what I really, it was like, my
I understand.
my reaction to he's okay with me reading his answers, and I'm like, if he wants to share his answers, you guys should get to have a conversation about it. You shouldn't have to read his answers and try to figure out what he's like. It felt like the lazy way or the lame way of him,
Or the
you know.
avoiding way.
Yes, that's
Uh-huh.
really it. Thank you, that's a better word. It's like, you sure, go ahead and read it, rather than him doing any of the work to talk to you about the relationship, and stepping into the relationship. Here, read the book and read my answers. So I'm sorry that you were triggered, and I agree with Dr. Rob. Just, he can, we have a work group on Out of the Doghouse, because just reading the book clearly isn't enough. And we have a porn addiction 101 level 1 work group. If he hasn't done those pieces, he's still going to be lacking the basic tools to do life differently. But on that note, we have a work group for partners too that starts June 8th. Perhaps consider that. We always have the drop-in groups too, but get support for you. I'm so glad you're here and bringing this question to us. So,
And now that you named chapter 3 and what it was, I'll tell you what
mhm.
sometimes anger partners, and I don't know if this is female partners,
Uh-huh.
is that men aren't built like you. There really is a Mars versus Venus. And we
Mhm.
have two different ways that we can approach sexuality. Nothing to do with addiction. This is about being a male. I can go somewhere and have sex with someone I don't know, and I don't really care about them. And it's a fun time. This is why a lot of people go to strip clubs, or a lot of people go to places where they're having some kind of sexualized experience. If we were to go home to a female spouse and say, guess what, I was just at the strip club and it was really fun, you would associate it with, I thought you loved me, I thought you cared about me, how could you do this, because it's much more personal and much broader for you guys than it is for us. For us, it happened at that moment, we went there, we're gone, and we move on. There is another part of our sexuality, because remember I said there were two, and that's the casual, disconnected one. There's also, and I'm talking about healthy men. And then we also have a part that is deeply engaged with you, can deeply love and be sexual with you, and doesn't at all have to do that other part. It's just that they're not related. That there's a part of us who, I look at someone in the street, whatever it is, I want to be sexual with them. In that moment, I'm not thinking about you. I'm just thinking, I'm in this kind of brain. And we do have different kinds of brains. We have a primitive brain and a more advanced brain. And that's the problem with being an addict, by the way, is my advanced brain says no, 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 but my much more primitive, powerful brain says yes, yes, yes. But in any case, it's harder for women to separate relationship and connection from sexuality. In fact, research tells me when heterosexual women look at porn, that they are not particularly aroused by images. What they're aroused by is some kind of sense of connection between the two, if there's two people. And if there's a sense of connection, they're more interested. Men don't care about the connection. We just want to see the body parts. So I think oftentimes women in general is like, well, not my spouse, not my son. Well, tell me, if we're male, this is how we look at sexuality. And I do think that there are challenges in the larger world because we don't talk about men and sex very often. Here, we talk a lot about women and sex, but not that much about men and sex. And I think that's a challenge. But anyway, Tammy, that's what I remember from chapter 3. And then you'll ask about what are gay people, and I will say uh, men are men and women are women and people in between are in between. That's what I'm going to say. And someone will
Okay.
be mad at me, I'm sure.
Well, this is, as always, take what you need and leave the rest. But we're
Thank
glad you're
you.
here. So, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So the next question is, how can I make a meaningful amends for 18 years of manipulation, lies, and betrayal? Anything I think of seems so weak, and it would come across as an insult to my wife. She wants her 18 years back.
Well, I want to not speak about that part. I want to leave that to Tammy, but I will say that there is nothing that you can say that will make a meaningful difference here. It's more about things you don't say. You don't argue. You don't ask for forgiveness. You don't try to correct your spouse's point of view. If they thought of it this way, that's how they remember it. And the big picture, it doesn't matter. You fall on your sword, basically, and say, I did this and I have, I'm in the doghouse. I don't get to call the shots anymore. But that doesn't really make up for anything. Because it doesn't go away. What you can do, however, is start a new road. You can, not looking at her to see how she'll react. I think it's a wife. Yeah. Not looking at her to see if she's pleased with you or not, but just saying, I'm going to do this for me, and I'm going to start on the meetings, and I'm going to go to the right therapist, and I'm going to go to treatment if I need to. And not because you want to influence her, you may or you may not, but because you want to show that you don't want to be that person anymore. And you're going there and doing that work will be someone that she might gain respect for, even though I don't know if you can turn that into amends. I do know that every time a spouse worries about us acting out, they feel a lot better when they see us doing things to get well, rather than talking about things that might get us well. So I know you want to jump on that, Tammy, because we're aligned. Tell me.
Yeah, no, I agree. My thought is the more you work on you and be a different person so that you aren't continuing to manipulate, because just because you stop the acting out does not mean that you automatically become a person of integrity. I mean, that we have a treatment program. We work really hard on that. We work on shifting, those behaviors. But even when guys come to us, they have tools to use, but that does not mean that they're never going to lie. They're not going to try to manipulate. They're just going to have, hopefully, the ability to interrupt that process quicker, and move forward. She wants her 18 years back. This feels like you're very early in the process, and I get it. I completely get that. What happens, for partners when they, hopefully when they start seeing that, the addict is changing, is that they start being able to understand that the whole 18 years wasn't a lie. There were moments that were really good and meaningful and true. And then there was this other stuff. But many times, the partner, I mean, I hear it from partners all the time. I still love him. I still care about him. I still want to be with him. But then there's this really dark area. And so grieving the loss of the relationship you thought you had, grieving the loss of the man you thought I thought my husband was this guy and he's not, understanding that I can never fully trust him again because he has proven to me that he can lie and hurt me, that he is not trustworthy 100%. That said, people can, eyes wide open, find a path forward. But if you're very early, she's angry, she's hurt, she's betrayed, you've known for 18 years that you've been lying and manipulating, and she thought you were a stand-up guy. So a lot of it is you doing the work and time, but you doing the work consistently is how it starts to change. So,
well, one real quick thing. I love what you said, because I could teach this to someone in treatment, which is you added the words, if you said, I wouldn't have no idea how to make an apology to you right now because everything that you would want or need would seem so insulting to you. That's exactly what she wants to hear, is that you're aware that there's nothing you can say to make this better. And there isn't anything you can say to make this better. So you're right. It would be insulting to her for you to try. And what you can do is work on you. So thanks, Tammy.
yeah. And focusing on how can I manipulate her to, forgive me is another manipulation. So.
Oh, and the 12-step programs. There is a step in the 12-step programs that has to do with making amends. It's about 2/3 of the way through, and that's why it's there, because you have a lot of work to do before you do that. And the real question is, why are you doing this? When we get there, are you doing it because you want to be forgiven, or because you really want to take responsibility for what you did? And that's kind of the question. Is it a manipulation or is it not? But anyway, in the 12 steps, you have an opportunity at no cost to you to work on this very question, which is when would be a time and how would be the right time to make an amends? But if you're asking the question now, it probably isn't.
Well, and it's often a living amends. It's living differently, because lip service, you've lied, you've betrayed. So saying I'm sorry and I'm not going to do that again is meaningless. Showing up differently, is meaningful. So,
Can I
okay.
say one more thing, Tammy, because it
Yes,
doesn't get said
please.
enough, is that people talk about Out of the Doghouse. And let me be really clear. Out of the Doghouse is a book for men who have done a lot of work on themselves. And they are now ready to look at how an apology would look. It's really not a book for men who haven't done their work. So when I hear a guy say, "Oh, I read Out of the Doghouse and I work on Out of the Doghouse," and I wonder, did you do the initial work? Did you go to the porn group? Did you read the book about sex addiction? Did you, get started on understanding your own problem before you move to let me see how I can be forgiven? I absolutely want to write a book for men to understand how to achieve some kind of real amends with their spouses, living amends. But it was never meant to be a let me manipulate you by looking like I'm apologizing when I haven't even done my own work yet. So if you want to take the Out of the Doghouse course, you have to take, well, you don't have to, but I'd like to see you take one of the uh, addiction courses first, because you need to look at your own self before you try to figure out how to apologize to someone else. But anyway, thanks, Tammy. I just want to drop that in there.
I appreciate it. Hi, thanks for all you do. My husband's extremely devoted, amazing, vibrant therapist literally dropped dead at a halfway marathon this past Saturday morning. My husband saw him 2 days before on Thursday night. He saw him twice every week in addition to doing 12 steps every day. It's almost 2 years since D-Day, and my husband is thankfully sober since and working very hard. This therapist literally changed him. I can't stop crying. We are devastated. Please shed some light.
I don't even know. Well, let me ask you, Tammy. What what is the question about? Is it about how to work through the loss of a professional? And what
I
is
think
this
so.
therapist? Oh, literally changed him. This person changed their lives and his life. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, please do. Yes. So,
I don't. How do I say this? I think if I were grieving, I would want to make sure I was getting support, and I would want you to lean into all your support sources, whether that's family or clergy or, I really appreciate your being here. You're telling us that you're not doing this alone. And when I think of the people that I counseled with, I mean, I told you this, Tammy, I had one of my former patients die. And, over the years, he had reached out, I'd reached out, how's your life going? Because we worked together for quite a while. He passed away last, I guess, in December. And as a therapist, which is at the other end of it, I just felt really sad. I really loved this man as a professional. Never knew him outside my office, but I knew his life. I knew his family. I used to tell him, I'm like a little owl in your attic. I'm up there if you need. So, it was really a sad for me. And so I would flip that on you in the sense that this is a legitimate loss. This is a meaningful loss. And by the way, you could find another therapist and they may be fantastic, but they're not the person that you were working with before. It is a relationship. And it is a relationship where someone hopefully is really committed to helping and loving on you and helping you heal. So, and I know that when I work with an addict, I'm also helping their family, their children. I know I'm not just working with one person. We can change kids' lives, and they never even meet me and Tammy. But in any case, I guess I just want to validate that this is a very meaningful relationship. And my guess is you really depended on this therapist to hold your husband accountable, and maybe you felt really good about the recovery he was getting with this therapist. And maybe there's a little fear in here, like, well, now that he's not with this person, who's going to make sure this is okay? Who's going to be the owl in our attic, so to speak? And I can understand that. I just think I wouldn't try to feel differently. It sounds really there's a lot hanging on this relationship. So, and besides, devastating, right? I mean, who goes, who does that happen to? I'm sure. Anyway, that's really, really sad.
yeah, I'm tearing up because, I mean, it's when there's a loss of somebody meaningful in your life, particularly when it's sudden like that, it's just, it is a major loss. And yes, and then I had this moment, like, one of the things that I have found is if I can focus too on the gratitude that I care. I mean, like that it's a meaningful relationship in my life, that I'm grateful for it. I'm sitting here thinking, wow, and this person has helped your husband and for 2 years come to a very different place,
Mm.
and so grateful for the time that therapist was able to be there for you, and has, I suspect, given enough tools that your husband will be able to carry that forward, and you will as well. But that doesn't take away the loss and the hurt. But you know, I was literally thinking of somebody while I was out paddleboarding. I was thinking about somebody really meaningful in my life that had passed away, you know, but to have that reflection of, you know, how much they meant to me was, you know, I'm grateful for those that I can pay attention to that, you know, and addiction, like that's just another reason to, you know, go use, but, you know, that I care and it can be meaningful and I can tolerate the sad, but also smile at the good is, you know, is hopeful. So I'm glad you're here. If you need names of qualified professionals, and I've seen this before, I'm going to share this too. I've been in this field and I know where people have lost their therapists and there wasn't a plan. And oftentimes, especially if it's somebody who's young and healthy, they don't have a strategy for where their clients would go. Yes. And so if you need support from that, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com, and let me know where you're located and I'll do my best to help you find someone to help step in. Oh, one more thing, grief. Sophia Cottle did a really good grief podcast with Dr. Rob on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. And she also does some grief groups on intherooms.com that could be helpful as well. But yeah, you know, you both have grief around that loss. So
I wanted to add two little things, which is if it were me and I had that had happened to me, and what exactly happened to you if I had passed away and you were my client, I would like you to light a candle for me. I would just like you to buy a little candle, and for however long it lasted, you know, I just, it's a Jewish tradition. Actually, on the day someone passed, we light a candle that's 24-hour candle. And I just love that tradition because it is a light, it is a hope, it's a connection, and it's literally something that you can do. So, you know, find your candle, do what works for you. But I like that. And the other thing is, I wonder if he has children or family, you know, or, you know, I would not, I'm not a big send flowers person, but I certainly will make a donation. You know, and in other words, this is bigger than you. He probably has kids, he has family. Maybe there's something you can do that will carry your feelings through by doing a little service for him or his family. And you can probably just send something to his office, you know, and it'll get to him. So giving and memorials. Yeah.
Okay, the next question, betrayed male, heterosexual marriage with possible reconciliation. I'm 14 months out of D-Day and somewhere in the grieving my losses stage. I'm struggling with determining if letting go is different than forgiveness. And I would like to hear your perspectives on where the two processes differentiate from each other. That's a great question.
Well, you're going to have to help me understand who would be letting go and what is I'm not sure I understand the focus.
The betrayed male. So the betrayed partner is a male in a heterosexual marriage.
Got that.
And my understanding is they're looking at possible reconciliation. So he's wondering if letting go is different than forgiving than forgiving the betray. If he lets go of the betrayal, is that different than forgiving the betrayer?
It's the gender thing that confused me. Sorry, I didn't.
If you're a betrayed partner,
so
letting go is different than forgiveness.
So it's a great question. That's a great question. I think letting go is about me, not about the person I would be forgiving. I think letting go is letting go of my anger, letting go of my frustration, letting go of my sadness, just letting go of all those things that keep me tied up. And by the way, it doesn't happen. It's an over time thing, of course. And hopefully if you're seeing progress in your partner, that will help as well. But I think letting go, and this is, Tammy may feel differently, but letting go is about what's going on inside of me. And forgiveness is about something that you give me. So, or I give to you. So, and I don't think, I don't think that I can forgive myself. I think I can, but I really like forgiveness from you. And I think that's something you give me. I can't make it happen. There was one other thing I wanted to say about that, Tammy, and I hope you can help carry what I was just saying through. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is like grief. It comes in stages. And people just think, oh, I should forgive them, or I haven't. And you know how grief, well, you may not know, but grief is bargaining and sadness and hoping things get better and then feeling worse. And all kinds of pieces go into the grief process. And they go back and forth and up. Well, you spouses know this. You're feeling okay one day and then you're feeling awful the next day. And that is your grief. But forgiveness also has a series of things that people tend to go through, and it can take a while. And there are some wonderful books about the stages of forgiveness. And I've always been fascinated in this. I would really suggest you get them out, and you might see where you fall in there. So I think forgiveness is a process that involves the forgiver. And I think for me, letting go is about, how do I let go of that pain? So Tammy, I
Yeah,
was confused from the get-go. So please
well,
help me here.
I understand that. And for me, forgiveness is also about me I see them probably a little closer than you do, because I do, for me, forgiveness is about me not continuing to hold the pain. And so I do let go of it. I have forgiven people that I have never talked to and told them that I forgive them. I mean, that's irrelevant. They probably don't, they may or may not know or care, that they hurt me. So for me, at some point, I do have to let go, but it is a process for me. And I do a little thing where I state that I forgive them, knowing or unknowing, I forgive them. So I guess it's still all about me on this one, because I need to do that. Now, I have had someone, it was about something I did. It was, years and years and years ago at work, and I completely muffed up, and I made my amends, and the person was not in the program and said, yeah, I forgive you. And I still remember that. I don't even remember what I did. It was not of that great a consequence, overall, but she used the words, I forgive you. And it was so, meaningful to me to hear, those words from her, so it's very powerful, for a healing process. But I also think it's got to be not just lip service. So I think trust your gut as to if and when you are ready to do that.
And I'll go back one more time and
Okay.
say, and I'll go back to letting go is really letting go of all your anger, all your hurt, all, the stuff that is tying you up. Forgiveness, as Tammy said, goes back and forth. You have to forgive yourself. You have to figure out how to forgive them. And that's a process. And that takes, you can let go. I mean, I think you let go with in a reasonably short period of time, if you're someone who knows how to work through things and you're, safe inside. But forgiving, that could take a long time, and if not a lifetime in some ways. Anyway, let's go, Tammy.
No, I got to listen. In the chat, it said, I think Shirley Glass said, forgiveness is letting go of the hope for a better past. I love that. So letting go is used in the definition of forgiveness. But I love that. I'm going to actually do a screenshot of that after I read the next question.
You do, Tammy.
I do.
I know you do.
So I am the betrayed partner. I can totally see how it's an intimacy disorder that my husband has. Why does it seem like he is pretty good at being emotionally intimate with talking and cuddling, etc., during our first 2.5 years of dating with no sex, and the first 9 months of our marriage before he started the typical addict behavior? Looking back, there were some red flags, but why did it go from pretty good to pretty miserable? And is that most common?
Well, I find this, first of all, when you start relationships, they can feel incredibly intimate. First year or two, they're all you think about. You think they're perfect. You want to tell every single friend about them. All their love songs are written about all that. And we often have a lot of sex. So, this is sort of the intensity dating, getting to know each other stage. It can take 6 months. It could take a year or two, especially if you're in dating mode. But once you're in a relationship, then it's a whole different ballgame. And it's scary. It's for us addicts, the closer we get, the further away we feel like on some level we want to be, or we certainly want control over how close we get to you. So, number one, I think there were probably things going on that you didn't know about in the first 2.5 years, especially if you're dating. If you're not living with someone full time, there's all kinds of stuff that goes on that you don't know about. But what I don't know exactly, Tammy, is what this person means by and first 9 months of marriage before he started the typical addict behavior. Do you think that's about how this person treats her, or more like
Yeah,
going
I
back
think
to
it's the
acting out?
intimacy disorder, because it's
Hmm.
probably the disconnect, because like, oh, we're talking and we're emotionally, cuddling, and we're close, we
Right.
feel close, and now
Hmm.
we're married, we're having sex, and there's the disconnect, which that um, uh, what you talked about
Well,
with the emotional vulnerability.
well, I wanted to say something about that. When you say he's pretty good at being emotionally intimate with talking and cuddling, that sounds sort of sexual or physical, and there is that kind of intimacy. But I think the building block of intimacy is is revealing yourself to other people. Is he letting you in on his struggle? Is he letting you in on how he feels about what he did? Is he letting you in on this? Are you asking questions about this? And he's actually being open and responding. And in other words, if I said, if I was him and I said, I think I really shut down and I understand what you're saying. It kind of reminds me of when I was growing up and getting closer to you, blah, blah, blah. That's intimacy. That's taking my vulnerable self and saying, here, you could hurt me, you could let me down, you could leave me, but here, and hopefully you'll move toward me like, wow, I can get a better sense of that now that I'm listening to you. So I'm less interested in the physical touching, or even the chatting. I'm much more interested in, is your partner not just being honest with you, being emotionally honest. I think this is what every spouse says when I hear from them is, uh, they don't talk to me. They don't answer me. They're not connected to me. It's a lot to do with emotional. They never tell me anything. I don't even know what's going on with them. All of that kind of disconnect, that is the emotional lack of intimacy. But sex is just a part of that. And some people think the word intimate means sex or sensuality, and it doesn't. That's just a piece. So Tammy, I'm not sure about the good to miserable entirely. Part of it I'm a little suspicious about, but that's just me.
Yeah, but well, I think it is an opportunity for communication of like, and even when we were before when we were dating, we were connected. I felt like you were interested in what I had to say. I felt like we were doing this, and now it feels like there's a disconnect. Are you feeling that too? It doesn't have to be you're doing this. It's like, how do we have the conversation? And I'm also curious because you're saying, I'm the betrayed partner. So you're identifying that there is sex addiction or some other problematic behavior, porn addiction, whatever. So I don't know if that was identified, like if he said, by the way, I'm a sex addict,
Right.
and you were dating and things were fine. And then got married, and now things have, he's pulled away and displaying more of the addict behavior, or if you've discovered he was an addict after you got married, and you know then that's when all of that hits. So not quite sure the timeline of things, but there is help and support for each and both of you, to help figure out, here's where we are, and where do we move forward. I'm going to give a plug because Dr. Rob is really, really, really good at helping discern, where things are. So he does a one-time 2-hour expert consultation for couples, and often can help them identify what the issues are. If you're stuck, it can be, here's where we are, and give some guidance for moving forward. It is not therapy, it is not treatment, but he's helped a number of, he's pretty, he's a straight shooter too, so it's not going to be all sugar coated, but you will have a pretty good reading of where things are. So if you're interested, reach out to me. I'm
It's a
happy to tell
lot of
you more
work in
about
two
that. So
hours. So it's a
it
lot of work
is.
in two
Yeah,
hours.
yeah, it is.
Yeah, I do want to say also that we're very good at seduction when we don't have you. And then once we
Mm.
know we have you, and I don't, the ring necessarily, when we feel like they're in with me, then we get kind of complacent. It's like, okay, well, I got this person. What else is going on out there? So being in the hunt, we're good at that, but real intimacy, not so much. And I'm talking about addicts.
Yeah. Now that's a very good point. So okay, next question. 2 months from the umpteenth discovery, no flowers, but thinks we should be having sex because he is saying all the right words. The words over the week became overwhelming, and I told him that. Later, he sent a question from a site, and I answered with I support you in finding a group and moving to recovery. He turned my words around on me and said he was overwhelmed. No support group for him, no therapist, etc. I don't want to be a victim, but how? I don't know if there's more to that one. Nope. So there's the situation.
Well, I see that.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that this is a situation that's in trouble, and it's not going to get any better. I mean, this is somebody who should be in treatment of some kind or getting some really serious help, because this is gaslighting. I mean, he's sort of like giving you this and then telling you to go that way. And, and then when you have a feeling, you get blamed for the feeling. Or I do hope you come. We do a lot. I don't know how many times, but at least 3 free, no cost support groups for partners. And
More
I
than
think,
that.
and
Yeah.
we have, and they're moderated by therapists. And I just think sitting in there and listening to the other spouses, maybe some of them will even, I don't know if they can chat each other here. I don't know. But this is typical for us, is to, when the heat gets a little too hot, we toss it on you. And unfortunately, when you're hurt, a lot of you spouses will say, oh yeah, I guess I do have some part in it. And no, you don't. It's you're being manipulated, and no support group, no therapist. I do want you to answer the last question, Tammy, because I think it's a really good one for you. So I don't want to be a victim, but how? How do I not be a victim of this man twisting my words and not being responsible, all of that? Because she knows what she's feeling.
Yeah. And what healthy boundaries, I think it's really difficult to not feel like a victim when you're at his whim, when you say, this is my healthy boundary, and until and unless whatever is right for you. And that has to be, the challenge. People say, well, what are healthy boundaries? And it's like, I don't know. What do you need for your safety? Emotional, physical, financial? Like, what boundaries do you need for you? It's about your safety. So, but yeah, to me, absolutely, the umpteenth discovery, I mean, he's not even coming to you and saying, I had a slip. It's absolutely, you're finding out. So this is a person who has not even started moving towards doing things differently, and lip service of, I'm sorry or whatever would be meaningless. So what do you need to do to set healthy boundaries for you? And then if he's willing to step into that, then you might see the possibility of having a relationship. But if he's not, then what do you need to do? If he's never going to change, if he's never going to get help to be different, what do you need to do to take care of you? And that does not mean you have to leave the relationship. Some people do, but many people go, I'm finding the support. I have my support group. And so what he does or doesn't do is less impactful to me. I can have joy and peace regardless of what he's doing. It's a little easier, at times than others, but it doesn't have to be every time you have another discovery, it completely rocks your world, so I don't know what's right for you, but I agree. We have a treatment program.
I did want to add one thing, because sometimes the obvious is what I forget about. You are a victim. You may not want to be one, but you are. And you're continuing to be victimized in this situation. What that whole thing says is, I was victimized and I'm still being victimized, and I don't want to be a victim. Then how, as Tammy said, what can you do for yourself that can get you out from under this victimization? Because it is happening and you feel it. It just feels like it sounds a little bit like you think it's your fault or something that you should, I would say someone's hitting you. And what are you going to do to make sure that they don't continue to hit you? And by the way, there are simple things like, are you sleeping in the same bed? Are you having sex? Is this person on the couch? Is this person still in your house? There are a lot of boundaries that I think you can set the more you get in touch with your anger. And right now, I think you haven't quite gotten there yet, but I see no discovery, no flowers, which means no apologies. When you got upset, when he gets upset, it's your fault. I mean, yeah, I would toss this person and change the locks if it's possible. But certainly I wouldn't be giving them a lot of focus and time.
So the next question is, how is letting go of resentment or the pain of betrayal different than just pushing those feelings of betrayal aside? That's a great question.
I'm sorry, Tammy. It made me think of, those questions you had in AP classes, like, what is a cow to a, this is the second one, if a cow is to a moose as a moose is to a, anyway, sorry, I just, these are tough ones. Okay. Why don't you start?
I would be happy to. So if I have a resentment, and I got to share this, I hate this. But early in my, when I was early in my sobriety, someone said that I was letting someone live rent free in my head. I hate that because I don't feel like it should be my fault and I shouldn't, it's not me. But if I'm holding on to a resentment, they get way too much of my mental energy and it hurts me. It may not hurt them at all. In fact, they may or may not know about it. So for me, the process of letting go, of forgiving them or whatever, is about coming to the realization that I have no control over them. And all I can do is work on my actions and reactions. Just pushing it aside is putting it on the shelf, and that just will fester. So it really is a process. Dr. Rob talked about forgiveness is in layers. Grieving is in layers. All of these things are in layers, and and it will, it can poke. It can poke up again, but then I can go, no, I'm choosing to let go of that, because I just don't want to, I hang on to it. So to me, it really is not pushing it aside. It is, I'm making a choice to not let that toxicity, take hold of me, and hurt me, because that's resentment is, what is it they say? It's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to feel the pain of it or die. It's not.
Yes, it's like poisoning yourself and expecting them to.
Yes.
But I really want to speak to this question, if real
Please.
quick, because words are important to me. It's partly what I think I'm reasonably good at, is really listening carefully, and that's why the consultations are useful, because I don't miss much. And I think that you're asking two questions here. I think you can let go of the resentment. I think that you can find ways to come to peace. Your resentment is really a form of anger, and wanting to make them see how angry you really are. That's really about you. And I think there are ways, as Tammy talked about, there's therapy, there's support groups, there's a betrayal partners group coming up, by the way, and that would be a great place to go to work on your resentment. But the pain is something else. Resentment is something you can work on and let go of, but pain may be there for a long, long time. And so while you can let go of resentment with some work, I think pain is a different kind of wound. And you probably have to let that one play out in other words, I don't think that's a let go of. I think that's one that you're going to need to examine and get support for. And it's a whole different process. I can write down all my resentments and start to work through them, but sitting in the pain of my losses, I can't, that's not an exercise. That's not something I let go of. It lets go of me. So
yeah, but you can get support, like
support.
Yeah, yes. If I'm talking to somebody, like if I have if we have a loss of a friend that we, care deeply about, if we're talking about that person, there's that shared, but when you've had a loss of somebody else, I know what that feels like, because I've lost people. So even if I didn't know your friend or your what like, it doesn't matter. I still can connect with that, and I can share and be there for you and help support you. But it doesn't magically make it all better. But a pain shared is also a pain lessened, I think. So.
I also think that it's, you don't want to push this pain aside, but you do want to feel comforted. You do want to feel understood. No one can make it go away, but as Tammy said, you can ground yourself in connection with other people, and the pain will be more tolerable. I often say, when one of my dogs passed away, I put a pictures all of on Facebook, like, oh, how cute my dog is, and blah, blah. And everyone came back and wrote, that's really sad. I saw you and your dog together, and I know how hard it is to lose a dog, and, stuff like that. Did I feel less pain because I put all that out there? No, it still hurt like an empho. But there was something very grounding in having people understand me and have them have me know that they'd been through this. And, it didn't make the pain go away, but it was sure grounding and comforting. And that's, I think, what we do in those support groups, is help you find each other in your pain and begin to let go of it. So thanks, Tammy. I agree with that one. Absolutely.
Okay, next question. I am thinking of changing therapists. The therapist is all about me. We are going through the recovery zone 1, and we don't work on my relationship. It's easy to steer the conversation where I want to go, avoiding areas I don't want to cover, and he doesn't hold me accountable. That's the biggest thing right there, and he doesn't hold me accountable. I have asked him to challenge me, but he wants to be gentle. Is this a me problem, or should I change?
Well, this is a trick question. in my
Yes.
mind.
Yeah.
And the reason it's a
Because
trick
it'll be
question
like,
is
Dr.
because,
Rob said I should change therapists. So
oh, well, that's another way that it's tricky. But the way I thought it was tricky is you already know what you're not saying. You already know what you're avoiding. You already know where you should be held accountable. Why do you need the therapist to do that? How about getting, I mean, yes, certainly there are therapists like me who can be very confrontive, very direct, but it's a certain stage of the work. It's when people are in a lot of denial, they don't have a clue, they don't know what's going on with them, and they really need someone to push them into looking at things differently. But you know things. If I was sitting with a therapist thinking, well, I don't want to talk about that, and I'm just going to change the subject, and if he doesn't hold me accountable, then I'm not going to bring it up. You're not doing your part. We are not mind readers. We are not mind readers. And, some people are more direct than others, but most of us are well-intentioned. And if you are trying to look good in front of us, I can only imagine what you're hiding from the people you love. So why don't you make yourself accountable? Why don't you say to your therapist, you know what? I was wanting to make you responsible for making me tell the truth. And I realized that I have to tell the truth, and I don't need you to be my dad chasing around after me to make that happen. So to me, I'd love to see you take accountability, and rather than having things change outside of you, I'd like to see some things change inside of you. I love that answer.
I love that answer too. And, because I was thinking, like, if you're just going to a therapist to check off the boxes, rock on. You can keep doing the same thing and have the same, results. And if you're in a relationship, don't expect it to get better. If you want to change, how we change is we do the work. I shared this before, and it's about the 12 steps, but the elevator to recovery is broken. Please use the steps. You have to do the work. You have to pick up the tools and be able to use them. And we've heard lots of people come to treatment because they've continued to lie to their therapist, minimize with their therapist. They're not making progress, and it's painful to them and to relationships as well. So, at some point, aren't you ready to get real and do things
Honest.
differently? Yeah. Living in recovery is such a gift. It is so good. Like, if people understood that, they would be jumping through the hoops to get there quicker, rather than, being stuck in the mud. So.
Well, it takes a long time to wash that mud to carry
Yeah.
that metaphor forward. I did want to say something about also in here, which is the therapy is all about me, and we don't work on our relationship. Well, first of all, I would be focused on you too, considering what you just said is going on. I would not think you're really ready to approach your relationship if you're not being honest with me, and I would expect you to come up with that. But I got to tell you, we run a residential treatment program. It's called Seeking Integrity. I think we do some of the best work in the country, and I'm there a lot. So maybe that's why I think that. But Tammy is okay with my narcissism. So, but in any case,
I say world, because we have guys that come from all over the world for treatment.
we do.
Like, there is no more
That's
expert
true.
clinical team than Seeking Integrity. I know that. I say that all the time. So.
Well, and rightly so. But one of the main reasons that men come to treatment, probably 90% of the time, is for their relationship. They want to save their relationship. They don't want to lose their relationship. They don't want to get divorced. They want to parent their kids together. Whatever it is, it moves us off the dime when we really feel fear that we can lose someone. And it's really interesting because we will, in our heads when we're acting out, dismiss our partners and devalue our partners and, tell you horrible things, but let you move 1 inch away from us. And boy, do we become, oh my God, I'll change, I'll do anything. But here's the thing: when people come to treatment, they want to fix their relationship. I can't take that away from them. I've tried. It's really a primary motivation, but I really think they do get to a point where they understand that what's equally important is that they heal themselves, and they really do get. I think it's one of the things you get in treatment. It's not anyone else. It is my responsibility. I created this. I need to find my way out, and here's why it happened. But in any case, there's absolutely transition in treatment, I think, from I'm doing this for my relationship to I'm doing this for me and hopefully what happens in my relationship. And again, I don't hear someone, no offense, I just think you have a lot of work to do. And this sounds like a question more focused on saving something than actually focusing on healing. Sorry about that.
Yeah. And I'll use another 12-step: half measures availed us nothing. we stood at the turning point. I can quote the whole thing, but I won't. But, you know, I hear half measures for you. So you won't get any of the benefits of recovery if you're doing half measures. You will be stuck. I have I took a picture of, I like quotes, and there was one where the bicycle stuck in mud or quicksand or whatever. And it says, you know, if you're stuck, it's probably because you like where you're stuck. And so if you aren't, you know, you're stuck because you're choosing to be. It's not because you have to be. So I love what Dr. Rob said of like, make yourself accountable, show up differently for your therapist, show up differently for yourself, and then eventually for your relationship. But right now, for yourself and your therapist would be a start. Do the work.
And I want to say, go to your therapist and say, I've been lying about this and I haven't been accountable about this and I've been waiting for you to stand up, and then see where the relationship goes, because perhaps you're the one who's keeping it superficial. And by the way, I remember Tammy going to a therapist and saying, you're not tough enough on me. And he said, you know, I'm not your sponsor. That's not my job. Go get a recovery group. I'm here to help you find your way out. So, you know, we do have different roles in treatment. Yes. Or even in groups, sometimes you're really going to get challenged, but in the day-to-day in therapy, I think you're going to get more supported. So.
Okay. One last question. So I got to put my glasses on so I can really read it. I
always have
remember
one last
hearing, I remember
It's hard
hearing
for
on the
you to-
podcast, I know, where an essay stated that they gained their freedom at the expense of their spouses. And this feels very true. My essay wife feels that when I bring up topics to process, it brings us back to D-Day. Please provide us with advice on how to own her stuff and how I can process through it without digging up the wound.
You want to start, Tammy, or maybe direct me? Because I'm looking at, there's a lot of things in here. So I'm trying to figure out.
So the addict feels that when I bring up topics, so it's the short version is when the partner brings up topics to the addict, that it brings back to D-Day. So
I see.
And I don't know if D-Day is Discovery Day or if it's their formal therapeutic disclosure. This feels like you guys haven't processed through enough, because if you've done a formal therapeutic disclosure, you would have, as part of that, when we, you know, if we're bringing things up, if something else comes up, Discovery Day. Oh yeah. You guys are, so I'm sorry, with all due respect, you guys are very early in the process, and you doing your work and having, like we talk about this on lots of, this is a long question. So, go ahead.
I did want to say though that it's not your spouse's, however your spouse feels about what they did, that's not your problem. And, you know, it does depend on how you bring it up. You know, are you yelling? Are you asking questions every 12 seconds? Are you, you know, Tammy and I often recommend that you have a time each evening where you meet and talk about this, so you're not talking about it all day long.
Right.
Part of the really hard part about being a partner is you ruminate about this stuff. And you think, if I just get that answer or that answer, I'm going to feel better. And the reality is it just brings up more questions, because you're grieving, and that's part of your grief process. But I think you've got it, which is, own your side of the street and how you're bringing up what you're bringing up. And I agree with Tammy, you know, it feels like there's not a right therapist in here. There's not a therapist in here. You guys are just beginning. And
but it says 14 months, but it's Discovery Day.
But it sounds like.
I know, but that's what I hear is like, there hasn't been, I don't hear professionals involved in this. I don't hear formal therapeutic disclosure. I don't hear the process so it feels like you guys are DIYing, and that would be a struggle. So like, what is your essay wife doing for her recovery so that you're starting to build trust? How is there a plan to talk about difficult things? You know, are you getting support as a partner, you know, as a betrayed partner, you know, for you in a codependent lens? So it feels like there isn't enough professional support and structure around this to be able to have a difficult conversation about, I mean, it's not okay for an essay to be reactive of like, well, you're just bringing it back to Discovery, you know, that shuts down conversation. So
Tammy, I hope you have a great evening.
Yes, you too, Dr. Rob. Thanks everybody for your questions. So yeah, that was, so yeah.
And guys,
thanks everybody.
At the treatment center, I'm coming for you. I'll be there tomorrow.
Well, he's not coming for you. It sounds like you're gunning for him. No, you're going to be there tomorrow.
No,
you'll be there to work with them.
They say let go and let Rob. I mean, you know,
there you go. There you go. All right. Bye,
Good night.
everybody.